DNS and BIND. In this nugget, we're going to explore DNS and BIND. By understanding the concepts behind DNS and BIND, you'll understand how domain names are turned into IP addresses on the internet. We'll learn how to manually convert IP addresses to domain names and vice versa using a utility called DIG, and we'll also look at what's required to set up a local name server for a domain. Let's get to work. Alright, so what is DNS and BIND, and how do they relate? A resource record of dns5.ez.com. That gives the IP address of that particular name. Okay, is this making sense now? See how it's all sort of intertwined, right? There's Fasano.net that relies on this name server, and then that name server has resource records that gives its IP address. Okay, so all the information is in that tree somewhere, and you're just going to have to find it. Okay, now let's go backwards with DIG. Okay, and what I want to do here is I want to take this particular number here, this dns5.ez.com. I want to take that number and turn it around and look up the name for that number. Now the way that you have to do this is it's a little bit funky. You have to actually reverse this number. Okay, not reverse the number like literally like 501.212, but reverse each section. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 105.212.153.209. Okay, the reason I'm reversing this is for a similar reason as that picture that I showed you earlier had com at the top, then it had IBM under it, then it had the domain under that, underneath that. Okay, so the way that math.mit.edu showed up in that tree is first it was under edu, then it was under MIT, then it was under math. Okay, so what we're going to do here is turn this IP address around so that we can find the name that's associated with it. But when we do this, we have to also have to append on something onto this. Okay, and what we append on is in-addr.arpa. Okay, so anytime you want to do what's called a reverse lookup, okay, we're putting in the IP address and we want to get the name, you put that IP address in sort of backwards, then you append on to that .inaddress.arpa. Okay, the other thing that we have to give to the dig command is what resource record we want from this particular thing. Okay, so when it goes back to look up this thing, we want the pointer record. The pointer record contains the real name of the host to which the IP address belongs. Okay, if I didn't do that pointer record, it would basically, setting up an authoritative name server might not be required. Okay, like for Fasano.net, for instance, okay, that particular machine is just, somebody hosts that for me and they take care of all that. I don't need to set up an authoritative name server on Fasano.net because I don't have like hundreds of subdomains there, and I don't need to take care of that myself. My hoster takes care of that for me. Okay, so that's one thing. So you set up authoritative name servers if you have an installation with lots and lots of domains in it and lots of machines in it. Okay, a caching name server you can set up even if you're not going to set up an authoritative name server. A caching name server, what that would do is that would allow repeat queries from your particular domain to be satisfied without going out onto the internet. Okay, so a caching name server would just take care of, so if I search for something like www.cbtnuggets.com and I get back that IP address, and then the web page comes up when I type it in the browser. Okay, well then if somebody next to me that's also in my domain types www.cbtnuggets.com up inside of their browser window, then they won't have to go out and get that same information that I did, because if I have a caching name server running, then they will get it from the cache. That'll be the first place that's looked before it goes out to that to the big DNS world. Okay, to that distributed tree that's distributed all over the internet. Okay, so that's the idea of a cache. Change this in named.conf. Well, in Red Hat Linux, you should use the GUI tool to change named.conf, and then any other changes you need to make to named.custom. All right, well, it's time to wrap up our nugget on DNS and bind. We started by talking about how DNS works, and I tried to relate the idea of storing domain names to that of a directory tree. Okay, and that tree that we can use to store domain names is really large, but it ends up getting distributed all over the internet. Okay, so there's lots and lots of name servers all over the internet that are responsible for some small piece of that tree. And we talked about using dig to uncover information. We learned how to use dig to turn an IP address into a domain name, and also to go from a domain name to an IP address. We talked about zones versus domains. We're normally thinking about the internet in domains. Okay, but really bind, which we call name server software, is really thinking about the internet in terms of zones. Okay, so the domain might be IBM.com, but because that's such a large domain, it ends up getting split into multiple zones, and then when that query comes for some machine at IBM.com, that name server query stops when it finds an authoritative name server for the zone that that particular machine lies in. Okay, we talked about caching only name servers versus authoritative name servers. Remember, caching only name servers don't actually provide any authority for your domain. They just cache requests that were made from your domain. So if from your domain you ask for www.ibm.com, that goes out, turns into an IP address, and comes back. The next time that you ask for that, if it's soon enough, it will be satisfied from the cache instead of having to go out on the internet to find that information. Okay, and an authoritative name server, remember, is the authoritative name server for the zone that you've deemed it authoritative for. And the authoritative name server has all the machines in it listed in some configuration file for it. And the Bind 9 Administrator's Reference Manual explains how to set up authoritative name servers and caching only name servers. And this is your friend. Use that manual if you're trying to set up DNS for your particular corporate or educational domain.